the moment, it's hard. Like, it's hard to set those boundaries because you don't know what's on the other side of it. You're fearful that they're gonna freak out at you because they maybe have done that before, but just sticking with it, because when you give yourself more space through setting that boundary, all of your childhood dreams come back up, and you attract people and situations that allow it to flourish even more.
Hi, my name is Pernilla, and this is my Challenge Your Norm podcast. I'm absolutely obsessed with anything related to personal development, and well, to grow, we gotta challenge our norm. And so on this podcast, we chat about life and how we can challenge our normal way of living it to make it greater than we could have ever imagined. Just one little belief, habit, bold move, and perspective at a time.
Hello, my beautiful friends, and welcome back to another episode here on my Challenge Your Norm podcast. I'm here with my friend Sonia, and we are in Ohio, Columbus, Ohio, at the Summit of Greatness. It is my second year that I'm back, and this year I got to bring a friend, and she was the person that came up, and it's kind of interesting because we have not spent that much time together. We met, how long ago is it? We went on a YouTube event.
Yes. I just made a TikTok about this yesterday, so I can explain the story.
I love
fresh on my mind because I was in the edit.
Oh, that's great.
But we met at a YouTube creator event, and it was my first content creator event before I moved to LA. And I just randomly said hello to you. We were waiting in line for a drink, and I thought you were there with somebody, but you ended up being there alone too. And we just found ourselves in a corner having the deepest conversation.
The match was done right away. And it's funny because we were both in a season at the time. You'd driven all the way from San Diego.
Yes.
And I was in a space at the time where I had told myself, I am wanting this year to build community, connect with like-minded individuals, because I know a lot of people in LA, but it was from my previous self.
Yes.
And I was creating this new version of myself, and I was trying to connect with like-minded individuals. And I just felt that right away through our conversation. So it was so cool.
It's so cool that you felt that, because my intention wasn't as clear as yours, because I think you mentioned you were at the Summit of Greatness earlier in the year and was so clear on what you wanted to attract. And for me, I definitely had ideas and senses of the things in my life right now aren't working out, the people I'm surrounded by, the situations. And coming to an event like that was me just trying to forward my career. But I didn't know that, okay, this is actually where I'm going to meet a lot of people that I'll build relationships with moving forward and build out kind of what you just described.
And that was also, it played a role in you ending up moving to Los Angeles.
Yes, that is honestly, that event in itself is probably one of the big reasons, because in that night, to an outsider's perspective, they're like, why would you move because of that? A lot of people in a very subtle way made me feel kind of weird for not moving there for a specific reason. But I'm sure you have other content creator listeners. I feel like you have to create things for yourself a lot of the times and not just wait for the opportunity. That, to me, having such a great experience there and meeting such genuine people, I was like, that's my opportunity. I have to take that next step, because it's showing me this is where all these people are.
Yeah.
And that's when we first met.
With you saying that, I just want to give the listener a reminder that I often give is when you have the urge to go to an event and you're scared of doing it alone. We both went to that event alone, and it's so scary.
Yes.
Do it, because yes, maybe nothing comes out of it, but maybe it is going to be life-changing.
Yeah.
And if you hadn't gone to that event, you maybe would not have been living in LA at this point. Who knows?
Totally.
Who knows
Totally.
if you say that's a push, who knows? So that led you to live in LA, which has helped you develop crazy over the last almost year. And you wouldn't have been here because we wouldn't have met. Mm-hmm. Maybe, who knows what it would have happened. But it's just reminding ourselves that those little steps, and I was so scared of going to that event as well. And I'm really grateful that I met you, and having this experience here at Summit of Greatness with you. You are the perfect person to be here with, because we are very,
I feel it too.
We're both on the same level of our growth journey. It feels like we call introvert, extrovert. So we need some time by ambivert.
Yeah, that's what she said yesterday.
Yeah, we need time by ourselves to journal. And when we are communicating, we're both on the same level, so we can challenge each other.
And inspire and not drain one another. Because I think a lot of times when you're on this very inspired, aligned path, when you cross paths, which it happens, it's not oh, I'm attracting bad people, but it's you do cross paths with people who aren't there yet. And maybe the purpose can be at times for them to see something in you or whatever it might be. those people sometimes drain you. And I think that was the big thing that I wanted at that time in my life. I wanted to meet more people that inspired me, just like I felt sometimes I was the one inspiring the people I was with. And that's weird to admit and say out loud, but that's truly how I felt at the time.
I can relate to that, and I'm sure the listeners can too, because if you're listening to this podcast, it's because you want to challenge your norm. You want to be out there and do more, and it's not the norm. It's not necessarily the norm. It can be. So I think a lot of people can relate to that.
We're in Columbus, Ohio right now, and I actually grew up in Dayton, Ohio, went to school at Ohio State University. So being back here for this and how it just came about is so crazy. But the experiences I had having such massive dreams as someone growing up here, you had to be a light almost for yourself. And I think it did have a ripple effect and could maybe inspire someone else. But yeah, I just have found I'm entering that phase of life now where I'm surrounded by more people and situations that fill me up as much as I feel I have given to others. Because we love to give. It's an amazing thing, but I didn't realize it until my later 20s, but I did have some people-pleasing tendencies. And having freed myself from that, I can give now from a place of like, I'm still gonna like be served at the same time.
Yes.
When you do come to things like the Summit of Greatness and you're doing self-development, however long you've been doing it, if you just read your first book or you're like 20 books in, it's like excitement you feel from figuring certain things out in your life. You want that for everyone.
Yes.
And I think I'm realizing how better to serve people, because I think both of us want to be of service. It's what a lot of this weekend is about, learning how to do, but being of service in a truly effective way for people who are ready to receive it. Because at the end of the day, everyone's responsible, I feel, for their life, essentially. And I don't know. It's a journey.
It is. So you came to LA for what reason?
I came to LA to be a global pop superstar.
Which you already are.
I am. I'm feeling into it every day. So I love to sing. I've been singing since I was probably around like 8th grade for other people. I loved music as a child, but I was just painfully shy growing up. And which I think we had this conversation yesterday. I was telling you how people look at me now and probably think I'm very different than who I actually am, just because I grew up I was an introvert, I would say. I was a little dorky. I was a little rough around the edges. I didn't feel pretty. Maybe someone looked at me and was like, okay, you were fine, relax. But I was an Indian girl growing up in Dayton, Ohio. Like, there's a lot there. And I also was born with an underbite and had all this orthodontic work. And when people, I think I was telling you, when people compliment my smile, I'm like, thank you. Yeah. You have no idea.
And you have the most beautiful smile. You said you had to wear, what's it called?
Headgear.
Headgear, wow.
Yeah, so that was a whole ordeal. Anyway, all of that produced this very like shy girl. And singing for people became the thing that I think that was the catalyst for me becoming a more confident person. In Indian culture, it's very common for your parents to volunteer you at family friend gatherings to share your talents, like literally like a show and tell. If you dance for us. If you play an instrument, play it for us. If you singing's the easiest one. So they would always ask me to sing. And I would make excuses at first, and eventually it just got so annoying. I was like, fine. And then eventually, obviously, I started to love it because people would clap and people would acknowledge this gift I have. And so started to sing more and develop this desire to be a pop star, and then went to college at Ohio State, where we are right now, and basically was told I needed to have a real job, as happens for a lot of people. But yeah, so I went and worked in finance for a while, like 5 years or so, and then eventually was like, I can't do this anymore. I was always making music on the side, in quotation marks, and eventually was like, I have to go all in. And I went all in, unfortunately, right before the pandemic. That was a whole journey in and of itself that now I feel has sort of closed out. Ever since I moved to LA back in November of 2022, like it hasn't even been a full year yet, and my life has completely transformed. And I'm still sitting there being like, it needs to transform more. But like, I look back and I'm like, wait, relax. Like it hasn't even been a year.
Yeah.
And I've already met you. And it's also crazy that it's been a year at the same time because I feel like we're just really getting to know each other.
Yeah.
So that's the whole spiel of me landing up in LA.
For anyone who has that desire, what would you tell them if they're crazy nervous, still waiting around, like when you were working in finance? What's something you would tell them to help them?
Yeah, I would say don't wait for an opportunity. It's not like you necessarily have to create your own opportunity right away. Just make like a small plan. Some would call it an intention to be like, I try and figure out how to liberate myself from this situation. Because it wasn't like I woke up one day and I was like, that's it, I'm gonna quit. Like my parents would have killed me if I did that. And not killed me, you know what I mean? But they just wanted me to have like stability, which I totally understand. What happened was it took me about a year from when I decided like, okay, like enough's enough. I can't do both. I was essentially looking back, I'm like, you were working 2 jobs.
Yeah.
More than that, because we know content and all these things, you wear a billion hats.
Yeah, and it's a mental, you think about it nonstop as well. So it's like a mental work.
Yeah. And then couple that with being so drained from the work environment I was in towards the end of my time working. And I just had so much less bandwidth to even create anything. It's like my life force. I always say it was like a Dementor was sucking out my soul. But I was like, okay, I have to figure this out. And probably the biggest hurdle was like, what do I do about health insurance? And so that was the thing that I had to like keep trying to like talk to people and understand. And for context, I had 0 creative friends at the time who knew anything about this. And anyone I would talk to, though they didn't know it consciously, they were indirectly dissuading me from doing this.
And I think that's normal, right? Like one of the speakers yesterday on stage said, or today, Jen
Sincero,
from the author of You Are a Badass and a lot of other books, she was saying how the reason for that is that when you become something new, when you're evolving and changing, then you're killing off the person that they once knew and that the person that they were comfortable being around, right?
Totally. And being more on the other side of that, I'm seeing like, okay, those people chill out and relax. Like it's not, when they have that response, it's not really about you, though it feels like you in the moment. So I essentially, once I figured out the health insurance piece, I put in my 2 weeks and I was like, I'm out. Took a year of like being like, okay, I'm gonna save, I'm gonna do all these different things. What am I gonna do at that time? I didn't have like a very clear idea, but looking back, I'm like, I'm glad I just decided to do it, because had I had a clear idea, the pandemic would have completely washed that out anyway. So don't wait for the opportunity and just try and move forward as best you can in the direction you want to go.
Yeah. And they're talking a lot about here at this summit as well. Take the leap. Take the leap before you're ready. Go for it. Like get clear on what is it that you want and what is the leap that you can take. And we had to do this exercise today where it's like step into your 85-year-old self and give yourself, maybe you pause this podcast and actually do this exercise because it was really powerful. We got a chance to connect over it after we'd done the challenge and talk about it, how like what are the 3 things your 85-year-old self would have told yourself, and then the 4th thing would be, and what is the leap that you should take today. It's a really powerful exercise. Either like pause the podcast right now and think about it, or journal about that tomorrow morning, because that's kind of what you did, right? Like at that time
it's a leap. And I will say I'm the type of person, like I like to take calculated risks. Like there's still uncertainty involved, but I think because I knew I didn't want to disrespect my parents, it was necessary that like the leap was in a way like stepwise. Because I didn't want to ruin my relationship with the people who have given me the most in life, like physically, emotionally, spiritually. Like my parents have been there for me, though at times I'm like frustrated at those tougher times. I was frustrated that they couldn't see it.
in your culture, it's very normal that you can either be a doctor or a failure.
Yeah, I mean, the guest yesterday,
He was talking about
Talked
that
about
as well,
it.
and
He
you were
was-
like, "This is literally me."
yeah, it's exactly that. And I joke around that if I told my mom today that I wanted to go to med school, she'd be like, yeah, how much? Like, let's do it.
Yeah.
She's like, what do you need to do to study for the MCAT? She would be so on board.
Yeah.
And now it's one of those things where it's a joke, but jokes like that would be really triggering for me, because part of my job as a singer and songwriter and artist and creator, which also is a whole other story of like just admitting that that's what you are.
Yes.
And being like, I'm an artist.
Yes.
It's a whole, like, you have to practice it.
Yeah.
Even though
Believe
I
that
sang
you
for
are it.
people all the time.
Yeah. Believe
think-
that you are it.
Right.
Live as if you are it. That's something I'm really practicing right now during this whole, I've talked about that a lot with you. It's like believing that I am the person that I'm trying to level up to
Right.
be right now.
And oftentimes you already are. Like, I was doing
Yeah.
all the things
You
that
see me
an
as
artist
that.
does.
I see you as you are.
It's
but do we
getting-
believe it ourselves, right?
Yeah, and I think Jen said this today, and I think she said something like, work for the rest of your life is like maintaining your connection to the universal intelligence.
Yes.
I'm like,
That
that's
we
so
are
true.
the universal intelligence.
Because we all know you come into this world being so connected to that, and then it's the conditioning or the people in your life, and I think that is the work that I learned to really do, and I'm still doing, where the boundaries needed to be set internally and externally sometimes with people, and with my culture and all these things. It's very trippy because the arts are such a focus of Indian culture, like dancing and singing. It's at every single party. We party all the time, and we have celebrations where people are dancing for different like occasions, and it's always part of the culture. You go to dance lessons growing up, all those things. As someone trying to do this as a career now, looking back all the times I would like sing at different events, I'm like, I was totally valued. Like, people loved it and appreciated what I did, but it's a different thing when you're doing it as your career. Like, I learned I have to treat this differently. I know it's so nice that every auntie and uncle wants me to sing at their kid's wedding with my dad, because I grew up singing with my dad a lot.
Yeah.
And I credit that with building my confidence, but I was during those period of like 2020 to kind of like a few years after that, was me setting the boundaries of, I can't do this. And if you tell your parents, sorry, you have to tell your friend, I'm not gonna do this. It's a tricky thing. And they're like, why? Just do it. Like, and then for me, I had to realize, I don't think people understand what goes into preparing a performance. Just like for you, people probably don't understand what goes into creating an entire YouTube video.
Oh my gosh, they have no clue. It's
Yeah.
actually, you've seen me around here.
Yeah.
It's like the amount of work for 1 second.
Yes. And I'm starting, and I love that I'm in this place now, I'm starting to embody that they don't need to know.
Yes.
And that's true
Yes.
art in a way, where like, I love sharing behind the scenes, because that's how I learned everything. Being a girl growing up in Ohio, not being in the industry, I would find the most niche behind the scenes videos of my favorite artists, and
Yeah.
that's how I learned.
Yeah.
But now I'm like, I want to still share that with a lot of the people honestly following me in my journey at different times, specifically on Instagram. I think people can relate to the vibe on Instagram at times. I'm like, they're just watching to see how cringy I'm being, you know? And so I now pick and choose those moments where I want to share all the work that goes into it. And I think we kind of alluded to this in other areas of life when we were chatting, but like, people feel when you put in the work. Like, a lot of these speakers, I had no idea who they were. I didn't look up how many followers they had. But when they told their story and how long it took and all the things they went through, I'm like, that's exactly what I'm going through right now. And that's what validates you, not like people being like, oh yeah, that is really hard, you know?
Yeah.
I think I'm learning just to let it be.
It's so funny because everything we're talking about, just throughout the entire summit, I feel like we have a lot of things in common. And the thing of like, of course our stories are so different, but this thing of understanding that they don't need to know. I've been recently with people in my surroundings, gotten a little resistance of the choices I've made, and realizing how affected I have been of their even unspoken opinions, because you
Oh,
can
you can
feel that.
Thank you for bringing this
You
up.
can feel the energy.
Yes.
They don't even need to say anything. They don't need to give you a look. You know.
You know.
Maybe judging you, maybe just, they just don't understand.
Yeah.
And when it's people in your life that you love, that you respect, whose opinions you value, it can be very hard to trust your own intuition and your own gut. And I recently went through a breakthrough, and that single breakthrough from that one action I took made me realize how my thought of their opinion has affected so many choices and actions I've taken in my life.
Well, you play small.
Yes.
That's what it is. You
Yeah.
know your power.
You don't play in alignment to your actual self.
Yes.
Maybe because you want to be accepted and approved and
Yes.
loved and all these things by the people that are closest to you. Of course you do.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm in this place now that the boundaries with those forces, we'll say, have been set. And so I'm now around more people like you, people I've met through the creator community that we originally met in. And now that I have those forces in my life, I'm in this fun stage now where I'm actually like, oh my God, I wanted to do this one thing for so long, and now I have like the energetic space to pursue it. Like the best example, and I'm still on the journey, so I'm even like cautious to share this, not that I think it's gonna be jinxed or anything, but just like I know it's the thing that like I've needed to step into, is being a singer-songwriter. A lot of times you end up recording yourself, you get all the gear, cost savings, all the things. So I've learned a lot of skills over time, but never given myself enough credit. And so I know that I have a producer's mind. Like I'm supposed to produce music, but I would work with a lot of producers and obviously make great music, but always being something in me is like, could I do that? I think like, wait, how did they do that to make that? I know how to do that.
Yeah.
But it's just I didn't step into it yet. So now lately I've been having more of the space, and I'm like, I'm a freaking producer. Like I can do this.
Yeah.
And I think that is the incentive for people listening, to set those. Honestly, in the moment, it's hard. Like it's hard to set those boundaries because you don't know what's on the other side of it. You're fearful that they're gonna freak out at you because they maybe have done that before. But just sticking with it, because when you give yourself more space through setting that boundary, all of your childhood dreams come back up, and all the things you love to do as a kid come back up, and you attract people and situations that allow it to flourish even more. And personally, I'm at that point where like we were having the conversation yesterday of you being a dancer. I'm like, I've been wanting to dance more, and right under my nose there's Pernilla who could like guide me in some way, And before, when I moved to LA, I like did a dance class. I was like, I'm not there yet, like, and was trying and almost like forcing it in a way. And just kind of through other areas of my life, I'm realizing this in real time. It's making the space for like the things I have on my vision board or my list of what I want to accomplish are kind of just accomplishing themselves. Yeah.
I love that. I think we forget when we're in the midst of our autopilot that possibly has been created through other people's wanting for us. We forget the power of when we listen in, when we meditate, and going back to that universal, what do we call it? Universal knowing?
Source or
Universal
intelligence?
We actually are connected to. That is what everything is, right? Power of when we take just one step in that direction towards our childhood dreams, like you were talking about, like how many doors open, how many new awakenings we get.
And something really powerful that was mentioned by Jen in the talk was like, it doesn't necessarily have to be your childhood dream too. Like maybe it is, and stick to it. Like when I hear stuff like that, I'm like, no, I know. Like I know what it is.
Yeah.
But for some people, it's like, well, there's all these other things I've kind of been getting a nudge for.
For example, me, I used to want to be a dancer. For me, it was hard to make that shift because that was my childhood dream. And then I realized something else fulfilled me. I love dancing, but I don't love being on a dance job because I am like a robot that is controlled. You have to do this and this and this. And I love creating. That's why I love dancing, because it frees me. But when I'm on a dance job, it limits me because I have to do it in a certain way.
Yeah.
But when I create content, videos, podcasts,
And maybe choreography
and
one day.
choreography, it's like I have the creative space to create what I want to create.
Yes.
And so my childhood dream, it's funny because it's the same space. When I was creating dances as a little child, it's the same. I was literally in this playground field of creation. That is, I've been trying to tell this to my family because they've had a hard time understanding this shift as well.
Was it like, oh, but you always wanted to do this, why aren't you doing this?
Yeah, like you moved to Los Angeles to dance, and now
Yeah.
you're still in Los Angeles, but you're like doing something completely different that they don't even understand, because social media is hard for people to understand if
Yeah.
you're a little bit of an older generation.
For sure.
But what I've been trying to explain is that when I was in this little playful bubble when I was a kid, dancing around, I got this opportunity to create whatever I wanted. And now when I'm creating content, it's the same. I get an opportunity to create, be in this little space of creation, of playing, dancing. For me, it's the same, but with the deep groundedness, purpose of helping other people, which is like my mission in life. And so it's just fulfilling on a whole other level. I've never felt that performing in front of people. Yes, I know that some people find joy in watching dance, so I understand that for some people is what fulfills them.
I totally relate to with what you're about to say.
But the performing in front of a crowd, that's not what gives me the spark, the fire. It's like actually making a change within someone's life through what I create. And so for different people, their mission and their purpose is different, and so what they do will feel differently. But for me, it's like,
I sense that your listeners too might be at the point in their journey where just having the audacity to be like, my art can help people is something they might be like leaning into. Because I know for me with songwriting, I'm like, I know how powerful music can be in my life. Like it's helped me get through really tough times and all the content, anything like that. But it took a while for me to be like, my music could help people. Like, and when I wrote my album, it was all these songs inspired by true experiences I went through. And when I was finishing it out, I wanted to finish out the production and package it in a way and tell the story in a way that could help someone who has been through the trenches of their 20s and had all of the situationships that broke their heart that took so long to heal compared to how long the experience was. So when I approach my art, I'm like, I'm doing this because this brings me joy. And in a way, sometimes you're like, is this selfish? Because I'm having so much fun. And that's something I'm trying to like work through now. It's like, you're allowed to have fun. And it also deeply helps someone. And I think sometimes I associate like the numbers with like, oh, I haven't helped this many people yet, so I'm not helping people. But like, I hear so many creator stories where they're like, I was posting 5 times a day for 2 years before things blew up. And
that was literally,
you and my other friend just said the same exact thing the other day. And it's like, you were helping people during that time. And I need to hear what I'm saying.
And you know what's crazy? If let's say you get 100 views on a music video you create, let's say. Think of 100 people in a room. How many people is that?
Right. And then that has a ripple effect. And that's something to practice staying connected to that. And that's what I feel like this weekend has done for me. I was like, this happened, but I don't think we covered this yet, but I had no plans of coming to this, and Pernilla invited me, and I happened to already have a trip booked to Ohio to visit my family that I was about to cancel.
So wild.
It's crazy. So for me, it's almost like, I think too, staying in connection with your intention, even if you feel like no one's listening sometimes, and you're just crying and praying before bed, it's like, there's something at work. And it's so nice when you have the proof, but just keep doing the practice. And the proof does come.
I really think we were connected.
What was crazy on my end when I received your message telling me about it is we had plans to record this particular podcast, which got pushed back for various reasons. And you reached out to me, and day before I happened to be in Ohio because I moved up my trip to avoid the hurricane that didn't end up being a hurricane in LA. I was like, oh, I'll just come early and visit my family. And the day I landed in Columbus, I remember having this fleeting thought, like no effort was put into it. It just popped into my head. And I was like, oh, is it? And mind you, I love Lewis Howes. I follow his work, but I had I hadn't like consumed much of his content lately. And I thought to myself, oh, isn't Lewis House from Columbus? Like, it'd be so nice to cross paths with him one day. And you popped into my mind because of the one time at coffee when I mentioned I was from Ohio, and you're like, oh, you know Lewis House, he's from Ohio.
Yeah.
Next day, guess who I got a text from? Pernilla.
Wow.
Saying, when do you want to do the podcast? And basically told me about this opportunity, and I was like, are you kidding me? I have the flight booked.
It's
Little
wild.
did I know.
It's
Yeah.
so wild.
I feel like it's a story worth sharing because a lot of times I actually was in a season of feeling like I hadn't had these synchronistic things happening like this for a minute. And so it was just really affirming.
I've recently realized a goal that came to fruition that I manifested when I was in Bali. We talked about it, and it's just when you get those little reminders of how powerful manifestation is. Those manifestations where you set an intention, you set a goal, and then you forget about it, kind of, and then it happens, and then you go back and you realize, oh my God,
Yeah.
I literally manifested this.
And it's so funny how you describe that because literally a couple days ago, with various aspects of my life, I was like, oh, this is so annoying. Because I don't think people talk enough about the journey and the trenches of learning about how all these forces work that I feel like I'm always learning about, you know? So it's nice, I feel, to share stories and hear stories about things flowing for people because you kind of tap into that a bit more.
Yeah.
And even just through us talking about our story, I'm like, why am I fronting about all the other aspects of my life? Like, look at what just happened. This is something to focus on, not those like quote unquote problems.
That's actually really important to dig into as well, is focusing on what you have right now that a year ago would have been wild to think about. Because it's, especially for people like us who are dreamers, who have so many dreams, things that they want to do with their life, and I know the listeners as well can relate to this, of like just focusing on all the things we want to do instead of reminding ourselves of all the things that we do have in this very moment.
Yeah.
And when I stop and actually take time to think about that, it's like it wows me, and I can be mad at myself for not reminding myself more often. You should never be mad at yourself. But
that's the importance. On our walk here, we were talking about how it's just as important to throw aside all of the work you've been doing and letting your brain in whatever corner it's working to process it all out and just go live. That's why having fun, I feel, is so important.
Yeah, it is.
Because you let go. It's like letting go without trying to let go. And your brain works it out on some level, I feel.
Yeah.
One thing too that just came to mind that I wanted to share, kind of going back to one of your questions earlier, I feel that a tip I could give your listeners if they're kind of at the point of feeling like they haven't embodied who they want to be yet fully. If you're a singer, for example, I'll take me. When I stopped calling myself an aspiring singer was a big change. And just calling myself a singer. Because when you call yourself an aspiring singer, and this is specifically for people from smaller towns or cities, other people be like, she's an aspiring singer. Amazing. Like, I understand what they're getting at.
Yeah.
And when you call yourself that, I understand that too. But you're a freaking singer.
Yeah.
You're an artist. Just leave it at I am. It doesn't matter how big or small.
I love that. I love that. I feel inside of me lately, I've also been the feeling of just saying I am a YouTuber. I've always been like, I like make videos on the like that.
And to me, you're a YouTuber, right? Yeah.
That change of switches something in your mind. And at this event, we're really just constantly reminded of your thought turn into your reality. Like literally. And we've been proving it. Like there was almost like a magic show today. We were blown away about how. I wish you guys could be here. Next year, come to Summit of Greatness, and we'll all hang out together.
You need to link who that person is below. I'm blanking on his name right now, but
I forget as well. But I'll put his
Yeah, that was crazy.
It was wild. When we met, we've talked a lot about dating.
Yeah.
And how we've gone through relationships in the past that have taught us a lot about ourselves and about life, and
I will say challenging for me.
Okay, yeah. What I want to get to is that I feel like we have a similar view on being single and how valuable that is. And I feel like from us both having been single for a long time, we have used that time to find ourselves in order to become the people that we needed to become to find our partner. And I just feel like someone who right now is single that
and write songs about love.
and write songs. You've turned it into songs. You've turned it
Yes.
into art. I have this, I don't know why, but there's this feeling inside of me that there's girls out there, or guys, listening who are single right now and seeing it as a negative thing. But I want that to be shifted into a positive thing, because being single, it is the biggest blessing to use that time to grow and develop into the people that we want to be in order to attract the right person. And you have
1000%.
We've talked a lot about this, and
So I can speak to this from the place of like, I'm still single.
Yeah.
And ever since I became single like 8 years ago, I wanted a relationship again for all that time. Like I had like a year of like, this is amazing, I'm free, whatever. And then I hit this point where, you know, I was still putting myself out there trying to find someone. And unfortunately, it was just, I call it a series of unfortunate events. Like I just kept meeting the same type of experience, the same rejection in a way. And I think my way at that time of processing the pain was to turn it into something, and not in a way that's like I've definitely written songs for my ego, like that's fun. But when it came to the album that I ended up putting together called 20 something, so if you're in your 20s, definitely give that a listen.
it's gonna be the first link
Yes.
below, and all of your social
Oh my
channels,
God, yes.
all of your
Thank
music.
you.
You guys need to check it out. It is so great.
Yeah, it was that time in my life I was like, I want to write about this from a place, because I hadn't heard a lot of music at that time that was dealing with breakups from your heart and not your ego. Because I think a lot of times it's so easy, like, yeah, screw that guy, go to the club, like meet someone else or whatever. And that's valid, like those are fun tracks. But I just wanted to put something out there in the world and take these songs that I'd written and produce them in a way that you could joyfully feel. And so the first half of my album is like the fun part of getting to know someone, the uncertainty, and it's like all upbeat mid-tempo tracks. And then the second half is like, oh my God, this has happened again. Like I'm in the trenches. I need to like meditate and breathe and get over this. But when you go through those single years, I wrote a song called Wilderness, which I really love, and I listen to this day as well a lot. Well, I listen to all my music, but that one specifically because it talks about like, I am the wilderness. And it was inspired by a Brene Brown quote that I read that like just really hit home for me. I think when you allow yourself the space to experience those single years, there's nothing wrong with growing within a relationship, but there's not a shadow of a doubt within myself who I am. I know I'm gonna be evolving, but now as I date or have crushes or whatever, they still throw me for a loop, like I'm not gonna lie, but I less so. And I'm very much more like, okay, I trust that someone is coming. I am gonna meet that amazing person who operates in a similar way but is different from me. And I don't think I would have necessarily gotten to that place if I didn't put all those tough things into my art. But moving forward now, I think you're allowed to also just have fun and enjoy, like whether you're single or in a relationship. So my music is more inspired by things I want to experience. And that's, I feel, a great lesson for me is like, I've been learning this a lot through manifestation, but like you don't need to have it yet in order to feel it. And that's kind of what I'm channeling into my music. Like, okay, I don't have the love yet, but what does that feel like? And maybe I have like a crush on someone and I'm like, oh my God, it's like opening up my mind a little bit to that coming. Let me write about that, you know, versus the heartbreak, which there's nothing wrong with writing that. I'm just in a different place now.
Yeah, we have different stages in life, and as an artist, what you create really is inspired by how you feel in that moment and stage of life, right? I mean, my videos are always inspired by what am I going through in the moment. And so and it kind of makes me think of something we learned earlier today. It's like how you talk about your past is really important. And I'm really proud that the songs and even just the way I view what I went through, I acknowledge that it sucked, because I think for your listeners, if they're going through it, it's really annoying to hear someone on the other side of it be like, you'll get there. And they're like, but you don't understand the pain. It's like, that's valid. But don't sit in there too long is what I would say, and let yourself kind of traverse into better times. I love that. I always have one final question on my Challenge Your Norm podcast. I had to challenge the listener to get outside of their norm today. what is a challenge you would give them?
Have more fun today, because that's what I'm challenging myself to
I
do.
love that. Have more fun today. That is
Yes.
such a great place to end. Everyone, thank you so much for listening. You have to go check out Sonia's album, her music, listen to it, vibe with it. Both if you're going through a heartbreak or if you're about to
there's
have
songs
fun
for
today.
everyone.
Yeah, regardless of what you're going through at the moment, there's songs for you, and I'm just grateful that you came on
And
here.
thank you for having me. This is honestly, like, I love the format of podcasts, and I'm always like at midnight when I can't fall asleep, like, you know, you like pretend you're on a podcast. So this is cool that I get to do
I love
this.
it. We have to do it again.
Yeah.
These are the kind of conversations we've had throughout this entire summit,
Every
so-
time we're like, we need a mic with us.
Yeah,
Why aren't
me
we
too.
recording?
But we'll just have to do it again.
Yes,
so thank you
definitely.
so much. And
Thank
to
you.
everyone else, remember that in order for you to grow, you have to challenge your norm. Bye.
Challenge your norm.